Well, it's another morning and another Jags lost and another Jag Bros episode. This is Joey Raymond with my two older brothers, JT and Jack. We are lifelong Jag fans, and this is super disappointing because our defense finally showed up and showed out, and offense looked terrible. They had one good drive. I was believing the Mac Jones hype train. I was tweeting it out. Maybe he's better than Trevor. Oh, no. Oh, no, no. He is not. And I sincerely apologize to Trevor and sincerely apologize for everything because Mac Jones stinks. That is really sad because I've seen him play fairly well at New England for a while, but it is totally gone. Trevor, please come back. Everyone who's had a naysayer about Trevor, it can obviously get worse, as you can tell. Even CJ Beathard may have been better. That was a really poor performance by that offense to only score 7 points when you had 3 interceptions. It's just miserable. But we will go ahead and get started on our new format. We are fixing the Jaguars team because most likely we are getting rid of everybody, and Doug may be the first one to go after that press conference. But what did y'all guys think about the game?
Here's the unfortunate reality. Jacksonville is now 2-8. There's only one other team in the NFL that's 2-8. That's the New York Giants, who just lost to the Panthers. The Panthers, who now have 3 wins. We are tied for the worst team in the NFL. And if you look at, who are the other teams with 2 wins that are 2-7? It's the Browns, who we already lost to, and it's the Dolphins, who we already lost to. We are fast tracking to yet again the number 1 overall pick. And yes, you're right, Joey. Mac Jones played awful. This was why I brought up in the offseason. I don't know why you're trading for him. It's not like you're getting somebody substantially better than Beathard, but everyone's like, oh, no, he's great. He's a starting level caliber quarterback. He is Beathard. You just ended up paying more for him, and you gave up a draft pick for him. But it doesn't matter because we can't draft anybody anyways. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what our strategy is?
Well, on the negative side, look, the Jaguars are making history yet again for sucking. This was the first game in nearly 20 years in NFL history where a defense has gotten 3 interceptions, plus our defense has never gotten interceptions all season, 3 interceptions, and given up 0 touchdowns and loss. Like, that hasn't happened in an NFL game in nearly 2 decades. And yet, the Jags find a new way to lose. But y'all have already hit on a couple things that are negative, but I'm actually viewing them as a positive. So here are my 3 positive things for Jags fans right now, because right now there's almost no hope. Here they are. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence is not the problem. Yeah, Joey, your tweet is going to be in the Hall of Shame. You know, it was exciting to see. Mac Jones gets up, spikes the ball. We have a lead in the first quarter. What in the world is going on? And then we don't score again. He turns over the ball 3 times, almost a 4th time that gets called down by contact. Clearly, it is not Trevor Lawrence's fault. It's an offensive play calling. It's a coaching problem, potentially lack of talent, which we'll talk about too. Second thing to be positive, the reality is we are 1 step closer to cleaning house. If we had found a way to somehow win that game, you could make all these arguments, excuses, the Texans are falling apart. Maybe we could make some sort of run. No. We are in last place, which is the third thing. We are back at the number 1 overall draft spot, where at least it hasn't been terrible, with Trevor Lawrence being pretty good and Trayvon Walker being pretty good, 7.5 sacks this season. But he also had an incredibly bonehead, crazy play to end that game, which was just shows you, again, poor coaching all around, poor culture all around. But those are the 3 things, at least from a positive standpoint, that I'm hanging my hat on today.
I heard on Twitter he understood the assignment and purposely did that so he would lose.
Yeah, and give to the coaching staff. I also saw on Twitter, he said this was our only shot because we all knew the offense wasn't going to be able to move the ball and get a touchdown there anyways.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that too. And Joey, you also mentioned one of the key headlines from yesterday, and that was the press conference. And for those that didn't see it, I highly recommend it. It's worth watching. I think it watches worse than it reads. I think it was Brent Martineau of 1010XL asks him a question. Essentially, hey, on that play where Mac Jones gets sacked, what exactly was the play design? To which Doug responds extremely condescendingly, hey, you wouldn't even understand anyways, which is just so tone deaf, When you know that the media, the fan base, everybody else is questioning your coaching style. Doug came in as this like lovable uncle players coach, and he just looks lost. He looks frustrated. He looks like he looks like the team is begging for him to get fired. He almost looks like he wants to just be fired and be done with this. And yet Shad Khan continues to leave him dangling in the wind week over week.
Oh no, he's been out of answers for weeks now. When they brought him up on the podium and he's just like repeating the exact same thing, constantly lying to us, and then now belittling us. This man has to go. It's unacceptable that you keep leaving this as a coach. Shad Khan lets people be coached for way too long.
It's wild. Yeah, we're recording Monday morning. So, hey, maybe by the time you listen to this episode, the Jaguars miracle will have happened and Doug will have been gone and he'll take Press Taylor with him. But the reality is, you look now big picture at Pederson's career. He had that one Super Bowl fluke season, which truly was a fluke. I mean, you had Nick Foles' magic, which also bit us in the butt because we go out and pay too much for Foles. But anyways, we got bit bad by that one fluke season. But other than that, he's never had a season where he's won more than 10 games. He's never had a deep playoff run outside of that. And it's clear, look, the Jaguars haven't won a game against an NFL winning team in 351 days. Like almost a year where we have not won a game against a real legit NFL team. Our only wins are the Panthers last year and the Colts at home and the Patriots overseas in London. He just can't beat good teams. Even when like the Eagles try to hand us the game, Sam Darnold tries to hand us the game, Doug just can't win. He's a loser coach with a losing culture right now.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect transition to what we want to talk about. Over the last 2 episodes, we've been doing a rebuild of the Jaguars, focusing on the roster, both offense and defensively. Today, we want to start looking at the head coaching, like who's available. At this point, I think every Jaguar fan knows Doug will be fired. There's question marks on what will happen with Baalke. I think almost all Jaguar fans want him fired too. What Shad Khan will do remains to be seen. But we want to spend a few minutes thinking about what we could do from a head coaching perspective. And I want us to talk about 2 or 3 guys that we would be most interested in. To set the table here, there are a few kind of, I'll call them groupings of coaches that are out there. Right now, there are the proven head coaches that are currently unemployed. That's Bill Belichick and all the drama that he would bring there. You have Mike Vrabel, the former head coach of the Tennessee Titans, who went 54-45 for them. You also have some up-and-coming offensive coordinators. The most obvious one being Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions, who's already turned down jobs with the Panthers and the Commanders, but he's at the top of most people's list. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills. Previously, he was the passing game coordinator for the Saints with Drew Brees had a record-breaking season, as well as the LSU national championship team with Joe Burrow. You also have the offensive coordinator from Houston, Bobby Slovic. So that's kind of your next grouping. You have a defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn, also from Detroit, that's floated up there as one of the up-and-coming coaches. And then you have a few other ones. Cliff Kingsbury, who's failed both in the NFL and college, and Lincoln Riley, where there's a lot of rumors that he is most likely to be looking at the NFL in 2025. Which of those names, or are there other names that would stand at the top of your list?
There is one name that you forgot that a lot of people haven't talked about, but I think is a fairly good one. Other than last game, it's the Vikings OC, Wes Phillips, has done a really great job turning Sam Darnold around. Other than last game, he's performed quite well. He was also the passing game coordinator for the Rams when they won their Super Bowl in 2021. He's coached under Sean McVay, who I think is a very great coach. He could be a very good coach candidate in this 2025 where a lot of people are looking for head coaches.
Yeah, everybody likes the Sean McVay treat. Joey, you infamously said last year that Sean McVay was extremely overrated, which I know you've walked back from then. The other offensive coordinator I failed to mention is Kellen Moore, who currently is the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was previously with the Cowboys. In pretty much everywhere he's gone, his offenses have gotten significantly better.
Clearly, the Cowboys are missing Kellen Moore right now. What a disaster. I mean, there's an interesting debate for who's in the worst spot right now, Jaguars or Cowboys. But looking at head coach, JT already mentioned him. every Jags fan, pretty much the top choice is clearly Ben Johnson. The unfortunate reality is he's the top choice for a lot of potential head coach openings. But you look at a guy who has completely turned around an offense, completely turned around a quarterback. Joey, you mentioned Sam Darnold having sort of a turnaround. Well, I just think about when the Lions traded, when the Rams traded Jared Goff, it feels a lot like where Trevor Lawrence is right now, where he's a number 1 overall pick. A lot of people are saying, man, he hasn't lived up to the hype. He's shown some flashes, but he doesn't get it done consistently. And all of a sudden, other than last night being terrible with 5 interceptions, Ben Johnson has led this offense and Jared Goff to a 9-1 record, a complete turnaround, potentially the Super Bowl favorite or certainly the NFC favorite. In fact, they've been setting records. Hey, I said the Jaguars have been setting records for sucking. Ben Johnson in their offense has been setting records offensively. They had a 4-game stretch where this is just nuts. They threw more touchdowns than incompletions in that 4 games. That's never been done before in NFL history. And it's not like he's doing this with Lamar Jackson or with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. He's doing it with Jared Goff. There's been a rumor last week that Ben Johnson is interested in more smaller town teams, which I don't know. I mean, maybe that's good news, but yeah, he's turned down several head coach offers the last 2 off seasons. But if I'm Shad Khan and in this instance, we get our top choice, yeah, I'm throwing everything at Ben Johnson.
All right, let's go rapid fire real quick. Yes, no, maybe. Bill Belichick.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'd obviously rather have him than Doug Pederson, but no, he'd be like choice number 12 or 13 for me.
I kind of agree. It feels like an Urban Meyer pick. I doubt has passed him by. He would absolutely be an upgrade, but I think it just brings a level of.
But he wouldn't run, I don't think, the offense that Trevor needs to run.
Correct.
Trevor obviously plays better in shotgun and a more college style offense. So you need a younger mind for Trevor, not an old style pro NFL.
He was more of a special teams defensive guy anyways. So like it would really determine who his offensive coordinator is. But I would just say over the last handful of years, he's not had a great track record of picking good offensive coordinators. So I agree with you guys. That'd be a hard pass. Vrabel, yes, no, or maybe.
I would like it and cheer him on. I thought he did great with Tennessee. I think he brings a lot of energy, and he never had his teams kind of quit on him. Even though he had bad talent, he'd still force them into the playoffs. I liked him.
Yeah, I would say a maybe here. I agree with you, Joey, that he would change the culture, which I've been pounding the table for months, that this is a losing culture. He would help that dramatically, bring some accountability where Jags are just making bonehead mistakes. But I lean still towards more of an offensive-minded guy. So I'd probably rank Vrabel on my list somewhere around like 5 or 6 for the Jags.
To me, he's a slightly better version of Jack Del Rio back in the day. Very stable, tended to get the best out of his players. Players wanted to play for him. The culture, I think, would be a big increase. It would really determine who he picks as his offensive coordinator to determine our upper level ceiling. I would be a slight yes on that one. I think we're all yeses on Ben Johnson for obvious reasons. How about Joe Brady, the current offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's in my top 3 for sure. I like him a lot. He completely turned around that Bills offense when they fired their OC and made him OC. So absolutely yes.
It's funny when I talk to Bills fans, there's still a lot of uncertainty about Joe Brady, and there feels like there's. And I know he had a failed stint in Carolina. There's one thing to be said that there's a difference between calling plays and being an offensive coordinator and a head coach. Look at Cliff Kingsbury; he has had success pretty much everywhere he's been the offensive coordinator, and he's failed miserably everywhere he's been a head coach. And so there's some question marks around Joe Brady's ability to be a head coach that would potentially make me lean somebody over him. So I'm a slight no on him, but would leave the door to be open for a maybe.
It's a good point. That's the concern with Brady. He's super young. I mean, he's just turned 35 years old, and I love him from an offensive-minded standpoint. But there are questions. My only question, look, I don't know the guy. I mean, I don't know what he's like in the locker room leadership-wise. I love him from an offensive standpoint, what he's done with, frankly, not many weapons in Buffalo outside of Superman Josh Allen. But can he change the culture around? Can he be a guy that brings in the right other OC and DC for his team. I have him just outside my top 3. He would be a very exciting name. Obviously, this would be a big opportunity for him, but there's a couple guys I do like better. So I'm a maybe to yes on Joe Brady.
I think he'd also be really good for Trevor Lawrence. He seems to do great with quarterbacks, and I would love to see that.
Next, we have Bobby Slowick. He's the current offensive coordinator from Houston. He comes from the Shanahan tree out in San Francisco. He also worked a little bit with Mike McDaniel. Yes, no, maybe with Bobby Slowick.
Last year was a yes. This year is a big old no. I think that he only relies on Nico Collins. As you can see, this team is nowhere near what it was with him on IR. This Houston offense has gotten worse, not better. He doesn't seem to scheme up a lot of things. I love when the Green Bay Packers lose their quarterback and still can win with.
Because they're playing the Jaguars.
Well, no, Malik Willis not only beat the Jaguars, but
they beat the Titans too.
But you could tell there's a difference when the coach changes up the entire offense and knows exactly what he needs to call for what quarterback. That is a great coach. Bobby Slowick, I don't think is a great coach. I think he's got some good things and he has really good talent right now. And I think when he doesn't have the talent, he's not as good. I think he's a bit of a mirage.
That's a good point, Joey. Let's bring up Adam Stanovich's name. He's the offensive coordinator for Green Bay. Is that somebody that would be high on your list?
It could be. The Green Bay always has a very solid offense, as I just mentioned with the whole Love going down and switching it all up. He seems to know what to kind of call. Yeah, I could be very interested.
I agree on Slovic with you, Joey. He was a hot name this offseason, but I was texting with one of my good friends who's a big Texans fan. And the whole narrative, even though they're sitting way, way, way on top of the AFC South, is that Houston is trending in the wrong direction, that they may go get 9 or 10 wins, probably still win the AFC South, but they haven't taken that jump to a contender. And yeah, I mean, once Nico's been out, Diggs has been out. I mean, I think they could make a run if they get healthy, but you want a coach that's able to scheme up big plays. Watching them last night, Sunday Football, watching a lot of Texans, it's too many screens. It feels like the Jaguars offense of last year. It's too many screen passes to the wide receiver, to Joe Mixon. Give us some creativity.
Yeah, I would be a pass on him. The next guy would be somebody who would be in my top 2 or 3. And that's Kellen Moore of Philadelphia Eagles. We saw them firsthand. I think we saw them play close to their floor offensively, especially with A.J. Brown going out. But the Eagles are consistently putting up high 20s to low 30s, which is significantly better than what they did last year. We've seen a huge drop off of what he did with the Cowboys, and you've seen a huge drop off of what Justin Herbert's development has been over the last couple of years since he left San Diego or LA Chargers. So everywhere this guy's gone, his offense has played well with several different types of quarterbacks.
Kellen Moore, about the same category as Joe Brady. I would be happy in the sense, of course, that it's not Doug Pederson, but I have them both just outside the top 3 because I just don't know culture shaping. Both are very young guys, but from an offensive standpoint, Kellen Moore is clearly saving Nick Sirianni's butt right now because Sirianni is crazy. And the Eagles are actually good, which I know we'll get into like some GM options, but a lot of those GM options stem from the Eagles organization because they're the opposite of the Jaguars. They built a very talented team that's able to overcome some poor coaching from Sirianni and Kellen Moore making some good play calling. So I have him like maybe 4 or 5 in terms of top picks.
I think he's a really great offensive caller, but as y'all kind of mentioned, I don't know how good of a head coach he would be. He seems to kind of move around quite a bit. I don't know if he always has the players like they're not the strongest offense. They're very pass heavy, very kind of finesse. And I want to get a little more mean and pounding than just air raid.
You have the personnel for a pass-heavy finesse offense. I mean, Evan Ingram is not a pound-it type of tight end. BTJ is the type of guy who could take the top off. You have a quarterback that has the arm talent to be very successful, despite the fact that he hasn't been able to successfully read. Personally, I think Kellen Moore is a perfect match with a lot of the talent that we have. Yes, he's bounced around a couple of different places, but the Cowboys was a clear step up over over the Chargers, both offensively and as an organization. And then I think he saw the handwriting on the wall and wisely moved away from McDaniel at the time to I think a relatively opportunistic chance to come in and step in with an extremely talented offense and take those to next levels. You've also seen Saquon, Joey, have his best year so far. So it's not like he's just this ground and pound it's not like he's just this finesse guy. I think at times Eagle fans are frustrated with him, but to me, I think he's an easy top 2 or 3 candidate. There doesn't seem to be a lot of the red flags or commentation like they have with Joe Brady right now around him. So I would put him ahead of Joe Brady. And the only guy I would personally have ahead of him would be Lincoln Riley if he ends up coming to the NFL.
I'll just say one more thing on Kellen Moore. It's a good point, JT, because my wife, Ashley, she's a big diehard Cowboys fan. So football is very tough in the Jack Raymond household right now. And as a Florida State fan, I mean, historically bad, but that's why we need a rebuild. That's why we need some positivity here because all of our teams just keep losing. But another great point with Kellen Moore was how successful the Cowboys were on the ground with Kellen Moore. That was the two-headed monster back with Zeke in his prime. You had Tony Pollard, who really looks kind of middle of the road, but he was thriving in Kellen Moore's offense as a third down, change of pace, receiver out of the backfield. And then you did have a ground and pound, one of the best offensive lines as well. So I mean, you've talked me into putting him over Joe Brady, but I do want to throw out my number 2 option as well. We can talk about Lincoln Riley, your number 2 as well, JT, but my number 2 is another offensive coordinator actually for the Baltimore Ravens, and that's Todd Monken. He actually had a stint with the Jaguars, our former wide receiver coach from 2007 to 2010, but most famously, he was the Georgia offensive coordinator from 2020 to 2022, 2 national champions. That was back when, of course, the Bulldogs looked unbeatable, like just clearly the best college team to ever line up. He also, fun fact, was born in Wheaton, Illinois, which is where I went to college. So that gives him some brownie points to me. But of course, the Ravens offense, similar to some of these other teams, they have 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson, maybe 3-time MVP, but they've really overachieved yet again. And at times when they're flowing, they look unstoppable. And so that's probably my number 2 option because he's a seasoned vet that also has a ton of success on the offensive side of the ball. And he's got championship DNA from Georgia as well.
He's interesting to me because here's my hesitations on him. Here's why I'm not higher on him. He's 58 years old, which I think Jacksonville needs. They have a young-ish team. They have a young-ish core. I think they need the energy of somebody else. It's clear he can coach, and it's clear he can coach offense. Georgia is certainly missing him. He had one stint as a head coach where he coached Southern Miss. Southern Miss went 1-11, 3-9, and then 9-5. So the argument for him is by year 3, he was getting these guys playing really well. First in the Western Division of Conference USA. The previous year, Southern Miss was 0-12. So it's not like he was taking over a killer Southern Miss team. So that there's some argument that he's proven to a certain extent his ability to get better. I just don't know culturally, like if it makes sense. He, I think, could be and should be a head coach. I just think with the current roster construction, Jacksonville needs somebody that's a little bit younger and a little bit more energetic than what Monken would bring, which I guess could be a knock on Lincoln Riley. He's certainly younger and innovative, but he's not the most energetic coach.
What do y'all think about bringing in Dabo Swinney from Clemson, who has clearly not gone
like Overmeyer too.
Hard pass.
No,
pass. Well, first off, he's not going to
obviously has not gotten in with the NIL. Like he refuses to pay them money, which is the future of college. So he's going to need to come to possibly the NFL. And he has an incredible relationship with Trevor, had him playing the best he's ever played. You have Travis Etienne still. Like there's a lot of Clemson guys, and maybe he can turn this team around.
For starters, Clemson's not going to fire him this year. They're almost certainly going to go 9-3 or 10-2. They'll be a good, solid team. Whether they make the playoffs or not is TBD. But
what happens if the Jaguars came with them with a
no? Why would he leave? Why would he leave? I think he likes college. I think he likes molding young men. I think he likes the all of that type of thing. And NFL is just so different. And in NFL, you're not building a culture in teams. You're really managing personalities. I just don't think he would be a good fit. I mean, Pete Carroll, I guess, would be a little bit of a similar type of thing, but Pete Carroll was also, I think, just had a little bit more edge to him than Dabo. Dabo's not bringing anything except for culture, so you would really have to rely on his ability to get an offensive defensive coordinator. And at times, he's been extremely stubborn at Clemson in things like the NIL. And so, if you have a stubborn coach that is not willing to take feedback and learn from the NFL, which I'm not saying Dabo won't, but I just to me that there's way too much risk there. I have zero desire for that.
Okay. Just a thought.
Fair enough. Yeah. We're brainstorming. We're thinking outside the box. Pete Carroll actually is an interesting name to me. Again, I like going the younger route, but if we do go, the older, more seasoned coach, he would probably be my top pick of kind of those guys, 60, 70 plus. He, of course, had a great run at USC, great run at the Seahawks, 2 Super Bowl appearances, should have won 2 if they ran the ball to Marshawn Lynch. He had the Seahawks in his 14 seasons 10 times in the playoffs. So he's rumored to be interested in coaching it. He's not my favorite, but again, if we go that route of an older coach, he'd probably be my top pick there. But yeah, I don't love going college to pro for a head coach, but I would be more interested if we looked like OC or DC. That is a little bit more interesting to me. But you also have to remember, especially if the Jags, hopefully clean house of Nielsen's gone, Press Taylor's gone, Doug is gone, you're probably going to give the keys over to the head coach and just say, hey, build your staff team.
Well, what's your hesitation then, Jack, on going from college to pro?
It just rarely works. And I'd rather have a guy who, I mean, you said it, JT, it's just such a different game. And yes, I know college is starting to become more and more of a mini NFL, but so much of college is recruiting. It is now NIL, where NFL, you're typically going to have a pretty steady roster, especially with some of your star positions. Like a lot of these Jaguars players, and this is why we're so frustrated with Doug, they've been on this team for a while and they've not improved. They've not progressed. College football, you're just always trying to get better. And that's why, back to Monken, part of what it makes me like him better from you telling me about that Southern Miss stuff, JT, is college football often is a longer, slower transition from very bad to potentially very good because you've got to now recruit a whole new class of freshmen. You've got to grow them into the right players, where NFL, you can hit in a draft, hit in free agency, hit in trade, and all of a sudden, you can be like the Commanders, go from bottom 3 in the league to an NFC contender and potentially make a deep playoff run.
I mean, I hear you. Coughlin was a college guy that went pro. It is a difficult transition to make, and I think there's certain coaches that can do it and certain coaches that can't. To me, Lincoln Riley fits the mold of somebody that, like, I feel like how he coaches and how he thinks is very NFL, and he's never shown a ton of appreciation or focus on recruiting. Yes, he's hit on some major transfer portal type guys, especially at the quarterback position, but I think his game translates really well to the NFL. So I mean, I would be willing to make that type of bet of somebody who's already been a proven winner at the head coaching level, because you could make just as easily of an argument of, well, they're a good coordinator, but when you actually give them, there's just a different skill set that a head coach has that a coordinator doesn't. As a head coach, you really need to be more of a CEO of it. You need to be able to like speak language that at a different level than you do it at the coordinator position. The fact that he's already done that and done that successfully would excite me.
I got some bad news for you, JT. The only way Lincoln Riley's coming to this team, and the only way I'm letting him come to this team, is as an OC, not as a head coach, because he has consistently had the worst defenses everywhere he's gone. It was at Oklahoma and then now at USC. His defense absolutely stinks. They give up 60 points constantly. Like, it is atrocious, the defense that he schemes up and helps the defensive coordinator. I wouldn't want him anywhere near our defense. He can be an OC. I think he's very strong at play calling, and I think he is really good offensive mind, but his defensive mind is a middle schooler's at best.
So to be fair, most of his ability is to find a defensive coordinator. He is not going to be calling the defense. He's not going to be as involved in the defense for sure. Now, if you actually follow Lincoln Riley, it's gotten better each year. He actually fired his good friend Alex Grinch, who has led the defense more successfully than the previous Oklahoma defensive coordinators, mind you. But he's put in a new guy in Deontay Lynn. As a defense coordinator for USC. USC's defense has actually played really well. If you look at a lot of their losses, the games are in the mid-20s. And so you could question, well, is he getting the most out of his offense this year? Fine. That would be a fair assessment. But I mean, his defense is much, much better than what it's been. So I strongly disagree with you. I think I appreciate that he's willing to try different things. If you look at the overall tenure that he has been a head coach, his defense has gotten consistently better, albeit never where it should be.
Well, and you bring up Joey. I mean, Lincoln Riley as an OC would be a dream. There's no way he's going to do it. But again, we're probably not going to spend much time on OC or DC, but one interesting name, and if y'all have any, we can talk about that as well before we bring up the other side of this rebuild, which is what do the Jags do at GM? Do we move on from Baalke? And we can have that debate. But you look at the number one name, again, from all three of us, from pretty much all Jags fans, from pretty much every NFL team right now, is Ben Johnson, the OC from the Lions. Well, potentially, he could bring a Jaguars legend with him because the current QB coach is none other than Mark Brunell. And he's been there since 2021, obviously been a part of their offensive transformation, been a part of Jared Goff's transformation. So Jags fans, that's, of course, going to be a big, big name to watch. And heck, maybe that's a selling point of, hey, bring Brunell with you. I don't know Ben Johnson and Brunell's relationship, but obviously Jags fans, that's something we would love.
I think Brunell would be in his
somewhere else that y'all would know.
I'm about to say.
Yep.
He was Episcopal high school coach. I think Brunell would be in Ben Johnson's ear to lean toward Jacksonville if he's in between Jacksonville or Carolina or some of the other positions that may come open in 2025. I know
Chicago's going after him pretty hard. At least the fans are.
True. Yeah.
I think Chicago will probably fire Eberflus or whoever their coach is.
Oh, yeah. They just lost to the Patriots. He's gone.
Yeah. Eberflus right now, for those who are following along, Doug Pederson is far and away everyone's favorite across NFL to be fired. Eberflus is most people's number 2.
So that means Eberflus will 100% be fired before Doug.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, we've already seen 2 head coaches fired, and this is kind of good transition too, because my big question as well would be like, who in the world would you put as interim? And I know we've joked about the special teams coordinator being potentially the only good coordinator. Well, the Saints actually did that a couple of weeks ago when they fired their head coach. They put their special teams coordinator in as interim. So that could be an option.
There's an argument to be made that makes a ton of sense because the offensive game planning and the defensive game planning take so much responsibility for these guys. So then to layer on top interim head coach is a lot of responsibility. So it makes sense why you don't necessarily just promote the OC or DC to that position, but look at special teams or a different kind of facet of the organization to potentially be head coach. I think famously the Colts brought out Jeff Saturday, who was not even part of the organization, to be the interim head coach at times. We saw Auburn do this when they fired their coach. I think Cadillac Williams came out of nowhere to be the head coach, just kind of a rah-rah guy. So, I mean, I don't think a scenario, I mean, you could even see a scenario like Tony Baselli comes out of nowhere and is head coach for a couple of games. I don't think those type of things are out of the realm of possibility when you start talking about interim coach.
Or it's Joey. Joey said a couple months ago he could have the offense turned around in 2 practices, so you never know.
Oh, we would be undefeated if I was the head coach.
With Mac Jones and Tank Bigsby.
Offense going.
And Brendan Strange and Gabe Davis.
Strange, Gabe Davis, Tank Bigsby.
Now, the defense would be a different story. Actually, I know defense. Let's do it.
All right, well, let's talk about the other big hot seat, hot topic, and that's Trent Baalke. Where do y'all want to start here? We'll give a couple GM options. We're not going to break down in as much detail because a lot of these names we're not going to know. But before we even get to a couple of those names, what do the Jags do with GM Trent Baalke?
I think there's an 80% chance he stays. If I were the owner, I would say there's a 100% chance he goes. But if you look at Shad Khan, how he thinks about these things, we've been in this exact same position before. He really does not like firing the head coach and the GM at the same time. He likes there to be some level of synergy. You could spin and you could spin enough of what Baalke has done to where you could say it's fine. I personally don't think so, but I think Baalke could tell a narrative that's strong enough to say, oh, well, the Mason Smith, the coaching staff is against me. You see Lawrence was the right guy, and you see BTJ has been the right guy, and I got Evan Ingram, and I did this and I did that, and don't look at the 50,000 other things that I did wrong or all the people I've overpaid. But I think there's an 80% chance he stays. So that's part of why we're saving this for the end and not spending as much time here.
Yeah, I think he could possibly be staying. My only huge concern, other than his drafting, is suspect at best.
Free agency.
But
and team building.
He's had good free agency classes. This one was just really bad, but the other two have been fairly good.
2023 he didn't do anything. In 2022, he paid Christian Kirk top 5 wide receiver money. And hey, I love Kirk, but he's not a top 5 wide receiver. I rock number 13 all the time, but he's
not top 5 anymore. That was just the way
he was never top 5.
Trending.
He was never top 5, and he was never trending to be top 5. He wasn't even the best receiver on his team originally.
Trending. I was saying the market was trending where you're going to
have never had a 1,000-yard receiving season. We overpay him top 5 wide receiver money. I
didn't have any problem with what we paid.
So you don't like Cam Robinson?
Can I get to why we don't like? At least I don't like Trent Baalke. Please.
Fine.
Everyone said this offseason Trent Baalke's hire was Ryan Nielsen. It wasn't Doug Pederson. It was Trent Baalke's hire. And if that is true, he has been, the worst defensive coordinators I have ever seen. So that makes me real scared of who he would bring in as a head coach and offensive coordinator if that's the type of talent that he brings in as a defensive coordinator. So that's why I am really scared for Trent Baalke is his selection and coaches.
Unless he just did that to undermine Doug Pederson and blow up Doug, which
to be fair, theory, but
to be fair, everywhere he's gone, he's caused some sort of division. So like, he's not somebody that's a team player that gets on the same board. Like to me, it's red flag after red flag after red flag on Baalke. Roster construction, we have major question marks on paying players and not paying players and overpaying players. We have major question marks on free agency. We have major question marks on drafting. We have major question marks on just draft strategy. We have major question marks. And then if you're layering on top of that coaching decision, major question marks, like what possible reason do you have for keeping him?
He has no success either. Doug, you could at least say, okay, he had that Super Bowl run. There's not that many active head coaches with a Super Bowl win. Baalke has no success. No success at San Francisco, no success in Jacksonville. And this is the thing that I'm pounding the table on more and more and more. I look across these last several years as a Jags GM, and I truly believe this. I think he has only had one great move. Has he had some good moves? Sure. Has he had some slightly above average moves? Yes. But other than trading back and drafting Brian Thomas Jr., I cannot think of one single great move that Trent Baalke has done. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Tell me another move.
I don't even know how much of a great move that was, Jack, because even if he'd missed on him, almost every single one of these rookie wide receivers is having a good year. Brian Thomas Jr. is having better year than most, but it's not like his risk reward in that situation is like, oh, he misses on him and he gets Xavier Worthy, or he misses on him and gets Lad McConkey. He misses on whoever he's picked. All of those wide receivers for the most part have been hits.
McConkey ain't not a huge hit.
Well, his offense. He's played well.
Well, and I disagree on that, JT, because I do think Brian Thomas Jr. is a clear 1 to 2 steps above, because some of those other guys just are even better situations than BTJ. And BTJ is still first in receiving yards, first in receiving touchdowns, even though he went like 6 quarters without a target. But again, okay, even if it's not that, like, tell me another move that you say that was a great move by Trent Baalke.
Evan Ingram's turned out
Evan
to be
Ingram, I was just
fine,
about to
but
say.
other than
Everyone
that,
said he couldn't
Again, that's a
catch.
good move. That's a good move, but you're paying him top 5 tight end money, which is about what he is.
or
Like, it's not a
top 10
home
wide
run.
receiver. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about
that's a
you got a
double.
top 10 wide receiver, but that's the strategy I think a GM needs to deploy. You look at a team like the Giants, you look at a team like the Bears when they got rid of Mooney. You look for these teams that haven't done as well, that are getting rid of these guys that have shown you flashes. That's the guy you take the chance of. You don't take the arc that, hey, a really good team with really good talent evaluation. Let's go rob them. Let's go rob them of Gabe Davis. Let's go rob them of Armstead. Let's go rob them because like everything they touch is gold. Honestly, if they don't like him, there's probably a major red flags. The 49ers were on the fence of Ayuk. They if they want somebody, they're going to go get him. And I think at this point, the 49ers, I think, would still be on the fence with Ayuk. The good players that they have, they find ways to keep. The bad ones, they let go for a reason.
I stand by my statement. No one can prove me wrong. I mean, I guess, put it on Twitter, put it on the YouTube comments if I'm wrong. But I still say you've got to in several years, because here's the other thing that drives me crazy. Like, are we really going to hand Trent Baalke another number 1 overall draft pick, another draft where he's got double-digit draft picks, another, great opportunity to build a team where clearly he has failed over and over and over again? No,
he has to draw. Whoever is the GM has to sell this position, because there's enough quarterbacks, there's enough people that will want that position. Trade back 4 or 5 spots, get another first-round pick in the following year, and because you have to build your roster that way with a quarterback like Trevor.
Oh, like we should have done in 2022, which we didn't
trade
do.
Back and you get like a first, a second, and like a third, and then you build out this roster in 1 year.
Yes, agreed.
What
the Texans did, what the Bears did. Look at these other teams that got good fast. That's the type of strategy we need to start deploying.
But again, history is the best indicator of the future. And in history, in 2022, the exact scenario, the Jags already had the quarterback solved, and they have the number 1 overall pick, and they have the potential to trade back and build more players after a terrible 2021 season. What do? They reach and get Trayvon Walker, who, again, I'm like, yes, he's been nice, and yes, he's improved each season, but he's not been a home run hit. Yet again, not a win. So what's to say he's not going to do the exact same thing and reach for a guy that's probably, 6, 7, 8 and take him number 1 overall? Because people don't like to trade with Baalke either. And here's my only hope. I get, Shad Khan doesn't make a lot of decisions. My only hope is that a guy like Ben Johnson has a great interview and he's like, hey, I've already turned down a lot of coaching offers. I'm not going to go to a place that has a loser talent building, a loser GM, a guy that has a history of going against the head coach, of going against what I want. This is my, I have the pick of the litter, and I'm not going to go where a loser GM like Trent Baalke is.
Well said.
Gosh, a loser. I just think he tries to.
He's a loser.
He just tries to outsmart everyone by like,
and he doesn't.
This guy is supposed to be
which Doug does too. Which is look the same for Baalke, Joey.
Yeah, the Baalke's way more of a loser than Doug has been, and I think that's right. I think if you go, here's the thing: if you go against conventional wisdom, if you go on an island to say this is what I want to do, for example, picking Walker when everybody tells you to pick Hutch, or you could theoretically trade back 7 spots and still get Walker, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. If you decide to go against it, then you better be right, or you better be right more often than you're wrong to not go against conventional wisdom, because there's at least wisdom in the sense of collective wisdom, and in the sense that you have multiple people looking at it from multiple angles and multiple perspectives coming to a generalized conclusion. It's not all groupthink. Oftentimes that's how you get good ideas.
Well, I know. And you can go against the popular thing a few times and be right, but you can't do it every single time. It's not always wrong. He's just always being like, oh, this guy's actually not an edge guy, he's a linebacker. Or, oh, this guy is a 3rd rounder, but he's actually a 2nd round talent, and I'm going to be so smart and take him now. Or I'm going to make this guy into something that he's not. Like, It's just constantly overthinking and trying to be the smartest man in the room. And he's just usually not.
So to recap what we're kind of looking at, again, this is part 3. Encourage you to go back and listen to part 1, where we rebuilt the whole offense for 2025 and beyond. Part 2, the defense. And this was part 3, the coaching staff and the general managers. So our top head coach, all 3 of us, was Ben Johnson. JT, you like Kellen Moore a lot and Lincoln Riley from USC. I like Todd Monken, OC from the Ravens. Joey, you're a big fan of Joe Brady, offense coordinator from the Bills. But the reality is, again, and maybe by the time you listen to it, Doug is already gone and some of these other staff. But the Jags are rebuilding the coaching staff. GM is still a debate. Let us know in the comments of YouTube or Twitter. Engage with us wherever and let us know if you want Baalke back or not, or if you realistically, if you think that if Shad Khan will move on from him or not. So those are our top head coach options for the Jags. We're going to tweet this out. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you want the Jags to pursue if/when we move on from Doug Pederson. But here are a couple names in terms of top GM options if the Jags go a new GM route as well. Really what you're going to be looking for is a lot of assistant GMs or maybe a VP of football operations. So for instance, Mike Borgonzi, who's been with the Chiefs for forever, he's their current assistant general manager. You've got like Jake Rosenberg. He's the former vice president of football operations for the Eagles. Andy Weidel, also formerly from the Eagles organization, now the assistant GM for the Steelers, who've overachieved this year. And then you got to throw in another Lions guy. Hey, maybe just bring all the Detroit Lions to Jacksonville. Ray Agnew, assistant GM for the Lions. Nick Mateo, the VP of football operations for the Ravens, is another name. And then one more name, Rick Spielman. He's the former GM from the Minnesota Vikings, a big draft guy. And overall, really what you want is a guy who's a very good team builder, number 1. Number 2, comes from a winning team, a winning culture. But number 3, and most importantly, is very, very good at evaluating talent and knocking it out of the park with the draft. Because the Jags for the future are set up very, very nicely with a ton of draft capital, of course, a ton of high draft picks in this draft, and not as much free agency space, not as much cap space. So the Jags need to crush this draft coming up. So if you have a guy that you have an eye out for that you think would be an awesome future general manager for the Jaguars. And we'll get into in parts 4 and 5 and following, because a lot to do. You know, what do the Jaguars do in free agency? What do they do in the draft for 2025? But also let us know, hey, what do you want us to see that's a new format for us as we talk about rebuilding the Jaguars? What would we do? Let us know. We always love to hear from you all. We love to interact with you all. So let us know what you want to hear in this series.
Our last segment here before we close is the game. We're not going to preview the Lions game. Right now, we're 13.5-point underdogs to Detroit. Detroit played a tough game against Houston. They won in overtime. They came back to win in overtime. It's a game that we saw close to the Lions' floor, and to still have a road win in the NFL is impressive. I think this is an easy bounce back win for the Lions and probably a similar score to what we saw 2 years ago when we played Detroit. I'm going to take Detroit 41, Jacksonville 13.
Man, if Mac Jones is out there again, it's going to get real ugly. Yeah, give me Lions 35 to the Jaguars 10, and hopefully we have some good conversations with Ben Johnson after the game.
If Mac Jones is starting, give me Lions 33, Jags 3.
Oh, Joey, you left Mac Jones.
Oh,
Left
no.
out in the cold.
Wow, Joey,
Trevor
the first time ever.
Good point, JT.
First time ever, podcast listeners, that Joey has picked the Jaguars to lose a game. That just tells you where this franchise is and how distraught even the most optimistic of fans can be.
I think even if the Jaguars were good, though, I would still pick the Lions to win because they're playing just winning football, even throwing 5 interceptions and still beating the Texans. That's crazy.
Yeah, we know already we can get a lot of interceptions and still not win, but we're going to at least watch, and we're going to keep the rebuild going. And again, let us know what you think and engage with us. We'll drop all the links, whether you're listening to the podcast or on YouTube. We'll drop those links to engage with us. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever we want to connect with you all. But we're going to keep the rebuild going. We're going to keep the hope alive. Hopefully we get some positive Jaguars news for a change this week, but we'll find out very, very soon. But we're going to close it the same way we have a lot of this season. Boo.